Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. I do a podcast. It's called It's Good to Talk. You'll know me because I got this book published a couple of years ago. And that's how it all started by Stoney McGurn. You can get it on Amazon. It's also on DVD with storytelling. So that you can purchase from me by going to jhfornews@yahoo.com. It's sponsored by Liffey Van Lines, a moving company here in New York City. They're 50 years in the moving business. When it comes to moving, let Liffey do the lifting. Now, I did some podcasts on my restaurant, Mother Hubbards in Ireland. So this is the last and final section of three that I did. The first one dealt with the foundation, the building, and the purchase. The other two are more about the restaurant setup in terms of menu, the garden I had for growing vegetables, and featuring on television and radio. And then the last one, excuse me, was my travels all over the world, to Russia, to China, and onwards to South Africa, Malaysia, and Poland. So what else was going on after all of that? Well, Christy Moore is a famous Irish folk singer, and he featured Mother Hubbards in a song called Welcome to the Cabaret. And not alone that, but I was at a concert in the Point Depot, and he sang the song Welcome to the Cabaret, and he developed from that a complete album called Welcome to the Cabaret. And the song features Mother Hubbards in a good tone. It's humorous and it's funny and all that. Christy is 77 years old. He's still touring all over Ireland at the moment as we speak. He has a brother, Andy Moore, who's a good friend of mine, another brother, Luca Bloom, who's also in the music business in his own right, doing his own career in music. So that was Christy Moore advertising Mother Hubbards for me with a great song. Now, what else was going on? Around that time, too, I sponsored a basketball team in Castlebar. They were called the Rockets, and there were a bunch of little girls. Well, they were, ironically enough, they weren't that tall. And I was approached by Sean O'Healy, who happens to be my name in Gaelic. And Sean is a radio guy. He used to produce a program from Castlebar Studios, and it was all as Gaeilge for a completely Irish listening audience. So that you could get it anywhere in Ireland, but most of his audience would have been Donegal, Mayo, Galway, parts of Kerry, and parts of Meath, actually. But you could get it in your car driving anywhere if you were fluent in Gaeilge, or if you were able to understand what Sean did. Now, what else was going on? I did mention before that I did a charity for Aware, which was a charity group that deals with depression. And here's a photograph from Braveheart. They were part of the act too. There's Brendan Gleeson, Sean Lawler, and the other gentleman in the blue shirt. There's John O'Leary. That little girl is a princess. I think she was late and they had to run with another princess for two photo shoots. So Braveheart made two approaches there. So two other gentlemen I might put up while I'm here is Joe Duffy and Porrick Dean. Joe Duffy's from RTE. He did a broadcast on the radio from Mother Hubbards Live. The guy who's talking to is Porrick Dean. He's the editor of a magazine called Irish Car. During around that time too, Donnacha Dooling is a famous radio journalist too. But Donnacha did a lot of walks international and all over Ireland. So I walked a lot with him for various fundraising. And the other lady in the picture is Mildred Byrne. I had her on a podcast a few months back. Remember her? Irish dance teacher. And the other young man is a culchie, what's known as a redneck, I guess. And he won some award. He's getting an autograph from Donnacha. Donnacha died at the age of 88 years old a couple of years ago. Very nice gentleman. Very interesting story himself about his life and times with RTE. Other events happening around that time were the Humbert School in Killala. It's the French came to help us in 1798 to fight the British. And since then, there's been commemorations every year, usually around summertime. So my good friend, Sean Golden, who this podcast is named after, It's Good to Talk, John Cooney and Sean Hannick, Tony McGarry, these are people that were involved in this Humbert School, which was in 94. And I was instrumental in that too, very much involved in sponsorship in the Humbert School. So what else was going on, shall we say, before I get down to selling Mother Hubbards? Well, Beat and the Peat was a big cultural success, and that happened here in Yonkers in New York, organized mainly by Midwest Radio. I mentioned Paul Claffey. I'll mention him again in a while. And Paul and a group of gentlemen from the Mayo State Association in Dublin, Paddy Morden, Noel Howley, to name two, and Mr. Ruan, and a whole bunch more, as well as about 80 volunteers, bringing bog to Yonkers, pure raw bog from the heart of Ireland, off County Offaly, in steel containers, like what's used for shipping. It was a great success. Lots of music and Irish show bands from Declan Ernie and Brendan Shine, John Hogan, Philomena Begley, Kathy Durkin, a whole weekend of continuous music cutting turf and various shenanigans, uh, bread baking and butter baking and drinking beer and lots of booze. My young friend from Glenamoy, who I grew up with, Michael Moran, he won the champion award for being the best turf cutter. Same name as Michael Moran that did the real estate podcast with me here. But Michael Moran from New York definitely wouldn't be cutting bog unless there was a lot of foundation there to build a high riser. So that's a shout out for Michael. So going on from there, I continue on to explain further on about the sale of Mother Hubbards and how that all ended. Other charities I was involved with was one called Vision, and Vision was a charity for the Children's Hospital in Dublin, and it was at the time fundraising for a machine for babies born with eye defects like bad vision. And they approached myself and my staff at Mother Hubbards to help with the charity, and we actually, in fairness to myself and my charity, we went full on with it. And the concept was to get celebs, like popular people, musicians, or they worked in radio television, do a little painting, a painting. If they couldn't do a painting, they could, improvise. Okay? So people like, for example, Pat Kenny from Radio 1, also RT television, he did a painting and sent it on to us. Joe Burke did a painting. Some of the music people like Ronan Keaton from Boys One, Daniel O'Donnell, singer from Donegal, and a whole bunch more. I'm trying to think of them. And then one guy, Jonathan Philip Bowman, was like a young journalist at the time, and he also did. And then we had an auction night in Sherburne Hotel in Dublin to auction all those paintings off for fundraising for the 10th Street Hospital to get this particular machine to detect and help with babies born with eye defects. So I went to the auction, I bought a number of stuff, and I would usually buy something and recycle it into another charity. So if it helped this charity, it would go on to help something else. So young Jonathan Philip Bowman, I bought one of his works there, and I met him at a show sometime after, and he was a little bit peeved that I bought the White Pat Kenny because they work in the same industry. And he said, well, keep mine will be worth money. And I actually quite liked it. And I'm sad to say he died very young, unfortunately, with a silly accident. But this is what he painted. I don't know if you can see it clearly. What he did very carefully was he took the letter I from various newspapers and he formed an I. And he took them like from Financial Times and different papers, colours. And it's called What You See Is What You Get. And I liked it, and I have the original, and then I made some frames and copies. And so moving along about my travels, I hope you're still with me for the ride. Our next country was to go to Poland. So we got into Warsaw late afternoon, evening, and it wasn't a good trip for me because my blood pressure started acting up and I had got severe nosebleed. And lucky there was a nurse on our trip, lady from Limerick, I forget her name, but I really want to thank her if she ever gets to hear me. And late that night, about 11:30, the nosebleed got really, really bad and it was like out of control. I had to try and clean myself up and get some clothes on and stuff, the shower. And I called her phone in her hotel room, and she came to my assistance and said, yeah, it's not good. I have to call an ambulance for me. Well, the ambulance arrived actually extremely fast, all things considered, and she was very helpful. And go down with them to the ambulance, and I'm going to the back of the ambulance, and she wanted to ride with me in the ambulance. And they said no, wouldn't allow her to. And she's extremely good. She jumped in a taxi, which was seemed to be just there, and drove maybe only a few miles to the hospital. And again, this was a typical communist hospital, I would call it. Everything looked pretty clinical and smelled like Dettol or Clorox. And every door seemed to be a blue door. We got to a waiting area, and I guess it was a Friday or Saturday night. And it looked like the locals were all in fights, and they were all there with various other problems. And I looked like I was in a fight too, I guess. I said to my friend, I said, I think I'm going to vomit. That's what I need to vomit into. She tried to get someone's attention. Again, language barrier. And someone came with a paper bag about this size. And I said, no, that's not going to do it. But I need to get the bathroom. So every door was a blue door. God. But anyways, I eventually found a bathroom and did what I had to do. And I came back, and then meantime she met two students from Warsaw, I guess, and they spoke English. And they said because I came in the ambulance, I should be attended to like immediately. And that was good, I guess, in itself. And one of those blue doors opened, and in we go, and she was allowed in with me. And all the doctors here were all females, were all women, more white coats. And one is laying me back on a recliner chair, the other one is doing something else, and the other one is looking for my insurance. And meanwhile, while I'm trying to get my wallet out of my pocket, the first one that's holding my head back is shoving what looks like a tampon up my nose. So when it's halfway up my nose, she just goes like, that, and it almost hits my eye socket. Of course, my wallet goes in the air, and everything is flying around the place. And I could hear my friend, the nurse from Limerick, saying, "You wouldn't do that to an animal." I said, "Okay, I'm not." On the way in, I forgot to tell you, on the ambulance, the guy in the back of the ambulance, the young man, paramedic, he opened a little drawer and he took out 2 pills and gave them to me. By now, I would have taken anything, really and truly. And then I swallowed them back, and then he started looking for money. I said, "Here I am, fucking half dying, and I'm being fucking hustled for fucking money." I said, "No," I said, "I have insurance." I wasn't going to give in at this point to anything. Anyways, got to the hospital, I was told he got the thing. Then a few days later, we're moving on up to Krakow, I think. And this is still stuck up my nose. And I get to another hospital where we have to remove it. I went and called my insurance and they named the hospital. And it was pretty much the same thing, only to remove this damn thing from my nose, which was painful as well, to say the least. And then we moved on from there and we all agreed we would take a tour of where the Holocaust was, Auschwitz. That was on a whole day, morning, a long, torturous tour. Tour is actually free. You don't pay anything to get that tour. Just tip the tour guides who were really very good at their job. And to bring you through the scenes of what it was like in the 40s and what the Nazis did to the Jews, and etc., etc., etc. And I have only a photograph from there to show you what it's like, called the execution wall. But you get to see the suitcases with the labels and the names on them. You get to see human hair. You get to see the cells where people were tortured when put into a narrow space and not standing for hours with sheer torture. The gas chambers, the yard where they would let dogs out to attack prisoners alive and kill them. And if anybody doesn't believe in Auschwitz, or if you're denying it, I would strongly recommend that you take a trip to Poland and go there and see it for yourself. It's very terrorism, and it's very sad and very emotional, to say the least. And other than that, in Poland, we've been to a lot of religious shrines and churches, all of that, and fault finds, etc. So other stuff I might have left out in the course of me doing this podcast. I'll move on, I guess, to talk about the sale of Mother Hubbards, okay? So this was the brochure I designed for selling the place in 1995. And I showed you the photograph earlier on, this photograph of what it looked like. So from this to this, right? Now, I got my friend again, David May, to design the brochure for me. I decided to sell it myself, so I didn't use a broker. I know I had Michael Moran here, he's a New York City broker, one on top. But this was a different product. It's commercial property number 1, and I thought who best to sell it only myself. So Ireland's most famous truck stop and restaurant on the Inn4 National Route 3. And then I caught newspapers like the success of the Inn4, the Irish Times, and this is the Bridgestone Good Food Guide. This is one of the most thoughtful, pristine, efficient places you will find in Ireland. Business opportunity. Okay? And keywords you need to put in: was seating for 110, fully equipped kitchen, hours of business 5:30 to 10:30, open a week, car parking, news agents, gift shop, those planning for additional dining. The freehold property, which was important, freehold as opposed to leasehold. Distance from Dublin 35 minutes, midway between Enfield and Gatton. And featured on television in Ireland, car truck and all that. Potential, you always have to put potential into something you're selling. So here's like a little outdoor garden head. Here's an interior shot of the restaurant, like busy day full of customers. And here we give them some information. Total area approximately 5 acres for public sewage. There's no sewage charges because we have our own sewage, true sewage. There's no water rates because we have our own well. These are all advantages. Kitchen fully fitted to high standards and the total square feet and all that. And in the back they get some more information done like this way in a very simplified, easy to read, title freehold, the rate of validation, cost of electricity, cost of gas, insurance, traffic. Some 10,000 vehicles passed on the solicitor. So around that time, then some radio stations would interview me about the sale, and that information, of course, would go out in different ways. But there was one radio commentator asked me one morning. He said, like, breakfast and breakfast all day concept was like me. He said, how many eggs would you sell in a week? And I said, close to 10,000 eggs. Now, 10,000 eggs is a lot of eggs. And I bought those from an agricultural school close by. Basically means I kept that school going for that 5 years by my share business of buying almost 10,000 eggs per week. Another friend said, those hens must be sore arses. Of course, if you calculate 10,000 eggs, as a good accountant would be able to calculate what the turnover was. The turnover was substantial, and back then, turnover was calculated to evaluate the potential sale price of the business. And it was getting heated then, and then I was on the Late Late Show, which is a big audience show, late night TV in Dublin live. And when I got on there, I promoted myself again, and I promoted the idea of the sale and capital gains tax and so forth. Inquiries were coming in. I was approached by a company called SAS, Scandinavian Airline Service, and they manage airports pretty much all over the world, and they're huge. Lots of countries everywhere, lots of restaurants everywhere. But they just wanted to buy the name, buy the franchise, like they would have a Burger King or McDonald's or Pizza Hut, that type of thing. And they run them, and that's it. So I was approached by those guys, but all they wanted was the name. They didn't want the physical site. They just wanted the brand, Mother Hubbards. And I remember Stan was the guy's name. He said, "Don't sell us the brand." But then he was a nice man. He said, "If you must sell, you must." Meaning, if you get a better offer. Now, hindsight might have taught me I could have maybe sold him the brand and continued on the restaurant and call it John Healy's Greasy Spoon. But I wouldn't know. The other buyer that came in was much stronger, more solid, and the deal was done. I sold in summer of 19. And then I was back down, invited back to another radio show, Midwest Radio. You remember I interviewed Michael D. Candrew a number of months back about football. He works as a sports journalist for Midwest Radio. And Paul Claffey, the owner of the station, wanted to interview me the early morning show goes on between 11 and 12 o'clock, right? And Paul is really jovial, funny, professional guy. So he has me lined up for about 11:45, 11:50, and it's all about the success of the restaurant and so on. And it's coming near the end of the interview, and the clock is ticking. It's getting close to 12 o'clock, and the radio stations in Ireland have to get out the Angelus prayer at exactly 12 o'clock. I'm conscious of that in the back of my mind. So Paul says to me, and I love Paul dearly. I mean, I did describe him as the Dolly Parton of Midwest Radio. Who doesn't love Dolly Parton? And Paul is lining me up for the last sentence of the interview. He says, "John, all my listeners want to know, how much did you sell Mother Hubbards for? What was the price? You have to tell us the price." I said, "Paul, yeah, give me a moment, I will." And then again, he pushed me again. It's getting tick, 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 closer to the Angelus. I said, "Paul, it was a price that the buyer was willing to give me, and a price that I was willing to accept." I went down to Castlebar and I've been to McBurn's bar. And McBurn's, I just heard you on the radio. He said, "You're a class act." And I could feel every radio all over the country turn the volume up. And then you just gave them that. Thank you for listening to my story about Mother Hubbards. I hope you learn some ideas if you're in the restaurant business. And remember, quality first, quality always. Don't forget your team. Teamwork is important. Your success, their success, their success, your success. Bye. I'm John Healy. See you next time.